Bow pull tight, crown like cold, winter light, scroll in hand, seven seals, every word cuts and heals.
All right, we're almost up. Hit that like, share the show.
Peace unstitched by a single roar. I hear thunder at my door. Wars and rumors of wars, spoken like a curse in the dark. Every headline, every scar is another cracked heart in the ark. Wars and rumors of wars. Hey, echo from the prophets and seers. When the lamb breaks
Let me see if I can.
all the old world shakes with our fear.
Dicey.
Black horse ways, bread and bone, steel stilled hard, iron stone, measure grain by a dying sun.
All right, let's see if this goes. Hi, everybody. Welcome, chat room. There you are. Let's see. I don't see the stream chat in there yet, but it might pop. There it is. Look at that. Ta-da. Here you are. Welcome. Glad to see you guys here. If I may, I'm going to bring in our first guest for the morning, who's normally our second guest for the morning, but he's been moved into pole position. Ladies and gentlemen, Philip Bittner joining us live from Kyiv right now, host of the wonderful show, and that is back. It's back in the saddle again. On the edge. Yep. That's what I'm locked in your way. I'm moving myself out of the way. There you go. Hey, welcome back. I'm glad the show is going again. The question, I guess, for a lot of folks is how's production going? How's everything working out? What's life like in Ukraine? We'll get to the King's visit, which I know you are a pseudo sovereign. Sorry, he's your sovereign. You're playing the old game. Who's your sovereign? Which is naughty, but still fun. So, hey, how are you?
Good. The studio's back up and running. We have a couple of minor issues with it. We had some difficulty getting a guest this week, but we got somebody to come in. So, yeah, we're moving ahead. We're getting back up to speed.
Excellent. And as far as like the bombings in the cities and the experience that you're having in the, in and around where you are, has it become a slow drum? Is it, are they using the sort of Iran, I don't know, the Iran pause in theory might allow for more attention to be drawn to the kind of attacks. Have they dialed it back any to try and avoid that kind of PR issue, or are they just...
We haven't had, it hasn't been so bad in Kiev recently, but some places out east are taking it pretty hard. I think it was about two nights ago we had a small exchange of fire with anti-aircraft and drones and things like that, but no massive. I don't want to jinx myself here, but no massive sustained attack that goes on for hours. Every 5 minutes or something. You're either hearing an impact or you're hearing anti-aircraft fire, for hours on hours on hours.
Right.
We haven't had that since the last time it happened, which was roughly a month ago. I want to say, if don't hold me to it exactly, but they'll send over the occasional drone. It's mostly a nuisance right now, but again, I don't want to jinx myself. But we haven't had anything in the last couple of days, which probably means we're due for something. But they've been getting hit. Well, it's just kind of the way it is. They've been getting hit pretty hard out east. And there's anticipation of a Russian offensive, but then also there's some progress that the Ukrainians are making, and they're digging in anticipation of a Russian offensive.
Right.
The Ukrainian intelligence thinks that the goal for the Russians this summer, during when fighting season really kicks in, it's the best time of year, climate wise, and
Right.
landscape and all the rest of it, conditions on the ground. That tends to be the best time to fight, which is when they launch their offensives. And the Ukrainian intelligence has already been putting out things saying, we think they're going to try and go for a town called Sloviansk.
Hmm.
And Sloviansk is at the kind of edge of a line of cities we've talked about many, many times called fortress cities, heavily industrialized eastern cities that kind of lie on the border with the Donbass,
Right.
which the Ukrainians have been fortifying for literally years. Um, but if the Russians are able to take Sloviansk, which I think is a big if, but should it
Still a
happen,
concern, strategic concern, right?
right, then what they could do is they could then wrap up, go city by city by city. If they can
Yeah.
get one edge, a flank on the line of fortress cities, then they can attack both, from an eastern, heading east and south, and that would put in increased pressure on cities like Kramatorsk and Kupiansk, and these industrial cities, which are kind of the wall that holds them back behind uh, what would be more open territory, although
Hmm.
the Ukrainians have been building defenses there, so even that also is questionable.
Right.
But we'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. It took them the better part of a year to take a town like Bakhmut or Chasiv Yar, which have populations of 60,000 and were mostly residential,
Right.
with a smattering of industrial. The fortress cities are all industrial. They're all yeah, car factories, tractor factories, smelting plants, coal refinery plants, uh, all sorts of kind of like really heavy industry, and they're built for you know populations of 120 to 200,000 people. So if it
Right.
took them a year to if it took them a year to take a predominantly residential, and I had to even call it city, but I suppose it is, of 60,000 people, I don't know how they can expect to take Sloviansk, a town built for, don't hold me to this, but I'm betting like 120, 150,000 people,
Right.
with a lot of factories and stuff like that, and defenses that have been, I mean, it's not like they're surprising the Ukrainians. The
Right.
Ukrainians knew they were coming this way they've done this way for a decade. So yeah, it's going to be, it'll be a really tough fight for the Russians, and Ukraine's capacity is improving. They're almost to the point where they can produce domestically what they need to fight the war. And in addition to that, they just got $90 billion from the European Union
Right.
because Orban's no longer around to obstruct things. So 90 billion euros, $120 billion, is could fund this war for, God forbid, another 5 years.
Right.
So I don't want to get ahead of myself. There are people who are very deeply concerned about Sloviansk, and I think it would be foolish to be dismissive of the threat.
Hmm.
I would be stunned if the Russians are actually able to capture it at all, much less by the end of the summer.
Right. And one of the big things that stood out in the value of May 9th as a holiday in Russia which apparently is going to be turned into a bank run holiday, insofar as I know right now, considering the state of the economy over there. But this is just, this day's come around a few times.
Hmm.
And there's, last time there was sort of an excuse as to why it was slightly downplayed. Hard to say. Now, the breaking news is, and here I'll share this with you right now, is this one right here. The parade will take place in Moscow on May 9th, but without military equipment. I think this is the second time they've had to do this. Usually they have these, the Su-25s, and it's the kind of stuff Trump really lusts after, that they have all their cool tanks driving down the street. By the way, ruining the asphalt and severing sewer pipes and all the stupid reasons why you don't drive enormous military hardware over regular traffic streets. Anyways, not that the Kremlin isn't a fortified, the downtown part of the city isn't basically a giant nuclear bunker because of how they built it. And that's kind of why they can drive over a few things. But to get there, they've got to drive over regular streets still, and it just makes life terrible for the your average Muscovite on the edge of town to do it. And they do it like it's almost singularly. I would say it's this parade almost alone, much like the North Korean parades, much like, I guess guys standing on tops of cars firing AK-47s on, in Africa or the Middle East, is their one way of saying we're the number two military in the whole world. Look at our parade of stuff. And now they don't have the stuff.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, it's
that's
all meant to it's all meant to intimidate.
right.
I lived in Moscow for almost 5 years. I saw four of these things,
Hmm.
and it used to be there were two primary holidays in the year in Russia, and one was New Year's, which the Soviets, which of course thought that religion was the opiate of the masses,
Sure.
took all the trappings from Christmas and moved it onto a secular holiday of New Year's. So New Year's became like one of the biggest days of the year, and everybody would go out and have huge parties and things like
Well,
that.
then also strip
Um,
away all the moral substructure without
yeah,
anything to replace it. That's that's one of the issues that sort
yeah,
of like that communist atheism has always had, is that they were like, they just kind of rolled in with a fuck this noise anti-religious thing, but they didn't really bother to build sort of a sense of cooperation and public trust and a high trust society
yeah,
that
yeah.
religion
I
often
mean,
carries up to a certain point, right?
right. I mean, there is gift giving and there's family gatherings. So there's that kind of
Right.
part of the social fabric. There's mythology that they adopted from you know in many ways the West.
Yep.
They just replaced Santa Claus with Father Frost, and Father Frost has his helper, who's instead of like little North Pole elves, is the Ice Maiden, and she always
She
melts. There's a whole
yeah,
tradition with
she
her.
tells you to let it go, and then the magician tries to steal her hat or something like that. Yeah, a mix
Yeah,
of everything that
she
yeah,
and well, she keeps, and then she also keeps jumping over the fire to kind of
as you
impress
do.
Father Frost, and in the end, she kind of melts in her kind of adoration of
V-
Father
valuable
Frost.
lesson for valuable lesson
Right.
for the children to not jump over the fire, especially if you're made of ice.
So
Um,
that's New Year's, but then the other big day on the calendar in Russia was May is well was is May 9th.
right.
Um, and that's why they did this parade to commemorate victory over the Germans. Uh, but yeah, you got to understand the mentality of what the Second World War means to Russians today. It's not it's not a holiday. It's not like a historic holiday. It's like
Yeah.
a religion. And every family has a story about what their grandfather did or what their grandmother did or what they suffered through, or
Right.
there's a mystique that is built around the Second World War and the victory against Hitler.
Hmm.
Which hey, fair dues, but it it's been very interesting to me, and I even made a vlog about this at one point. Is that lots of people think that Russia was this great frontline area of the Second World War, and indeed there was the first year of the German invasion. When they tried to get to Moscow, there was the Battle of Moscow. They got to the gates, but that was about as far as they ever got. There was the siege of what we call St. Petersburg now, Leningrad back then, and then of course there was Stalingrad. So I don't want to dismiss the blood that was shed, but actually the real serious fighting between the Nazi war machine and the Soviet Union happened here, happened
Yeah.
in Belarus. It happened in Belarus and it happened in Ukraine. That's where a lot of the most intense fighting happened. And so every May 9th in since independence, since they got free of Moscow, every May 9th in Ukraine is a very somber day.
Hmm.
You you do kind of some will go lay graves, lay flowers at graves, or go to churches to light candles, or things like that. Whereas in Russia, it takes on this whole aspect of almost like a party. The parade and
Right.
people are getting together and they're having feasts and they're
Is there drinking
uh,
involved? I feel like it's Russia. There's drinking involved.
lots and lots of drinking.
Yeah, yeah.
But of
There's some
course,
ring. A little bit. A little bit.
and of course, the stories of what great granddad did in the war is relayed to the younger generation and things like
Right.
that.
Right.
And it's anecdotal, but I have a friend of mine, for example, who tells the story of his, I guess it was his grandfather, who was a pilot, a fighter pilot, and he had been drinking the night before because he wasn't supposed to be on call the next day, but situation changed, so they threw him in a
Hmm.
plane, and he was hungover and all the rest of it,
As you do.
and got into a dogfight with a German fighter, and they were doing all this aerobatics, and of course him being deeply hungover, he threw up all over his canopy, over his cockpit,
Uh-huh.
and the German was so
Jesus
shocked and
Christ.
disgusted that he also threw up, and that's the story that his family tells itself. And thank goodness we're not on Saturday, but bullshit.
Yeah, right.
Bullshit.
Yeah,
Of course that never happened.
sure.
But that's the story they tell themselves. That's the story that will be passed on for who knows how many more generations.
Right.
And it's just because it's the Second World War is religion, it's mythology, it's identity, it's so many different things.
Right.
And so that's another reason why so externally they do this parade with all their nuclear, intercontinental ballistic missiles and their artillery pieces and all the rest of it. To externally, they say, look how great we are, don't mess with us. But internally, it's this, like
Right.
remembrance of the
Well,
might and
I
power of the USSR.
look, I maybe that's an apocryphal story about a Russian fighter pilot hungover vomiting inside of his airplane and barfing all over the glass above him so that it dripped down on him every time he rolled his plane. And the German pilot was close enough to see this happen enough to vomit as well. I know, and maybe it's apocryphal, but it reminds me of that line from L.A. Story. You know, a kiss may not be the truth, but it's what we wish were true. And I
Mhm.
choose to believe that there was at one point a Russian pilot so hungover that he vomited all over himself and won the war by barfing. Because the real truth is
But
even
you
worse.
but you go to but you go to every family, and every family has a story like that. Now it's
Right.
not always military. It's also not always
It's not.
military.
It's not always
It's
vomit.
also it's not always bombing.
It's yeah.
But it is,
Sometimes it's worse.
sometimes it's like, you know
Sorry, I brought a little. You missed
the-
Johnny, so yeah.
sometimes it's like, grandma was so desperate for food that they boiled, shoelaces for days on end and ate their shoelaces, sort of thing. And that's how
Right.
the
The old.
deprivations they went through.
Yeah, the old
Yeah.
like who was so trying to take care of the husband was off fighting, the grandfather was there and the grandmother was there. They were taking care of everybody. They're destitute. The grandmother goes, I've only got one choice. I've got to go out and prostitute myself for the money so that we can all eat. And she takes it as a mission for the family. And she goes out and does it. And she comes back the next morning with enough money for food and rent. She has $225.25. And the grandfather says, who gave you the 25 cents? And she says, everybody. So sorry. It's
Solid
much
joke.
more solemn a story in Russian. It hits differently in the mother tongue. That's what she said. So I wanted my favorite part of this piece of news that I was sharing earlier about them not having stuff at this May 9th parade was the defense ministry say there would be no columns of military equipment on the parade at the parade due to the current situation, which I find beautifully vague, arguing that we can't even spare the cardboard tanks. We can't even, the fake missiles we make out of welded garbage cans that are spray painted so that it looks like we're showing the world where our nukes are. And if they wanted to hit us, at least 35 of them are out of commission because they're rolling down the street in front of our leader. Probably not a great strategy. We can't even do that this time because because they probably sold the empties to Iran. And then it says also due to the operational situation, which is, keg breathian level bullshit. Cadets from military schools will not participate in the parade. That is because cadets are being sent to the front fucking lines
Yeah.
between Russia
Yeah.
and Iran. That like child soldiers are now having their day in the sun. Iran dropped the age of like I was going to say recruitment, but conscription to 12 years old. 12. You can now be, and by the way, like anybody's fucking keeping track. If you're a tall 11-year-old, like they'll give a shit. But there are 12-year-olds guarding stations and carrying guns in Iran right now. And the Russians are like, hey guys, wait up.
Yeah. Yeah, well,
Just
and
awful.
the other thing is, again, having witnessed several May Day or May 9th Victory Day parade. The other thing is that the way they do it. So Moscow has what's called the Ring Road, and
Mhm.
and they've built this massive, you know, a multi-lane. Sometimes it's like, four, sometimes it's 8 lane,
Yeah.
enormous road that goes all around the center of Moscow, and that's the staging area for all the military ordnance and the parade and all the rest of it. And so they line up along this ring road, and it just occurs to me, it's like if I was a Ukrainian drone operator
Right.
and you had rows and miles and miles and miles of military hardware just
Oh
sitting
yeah.
there waiting their turn to drive past a bunch of dignitaries and the president or the czar on Red Square, and they're just sitting there for
Right.
hours and hours,
And
just
it would not be a
static.
good look it would not be a good look for Herr Putin if they had to start returning fire with those munitions while they're waiting to be in a fucking parade.
Yeah.
Speaking of how beloved Putin is right now, there is the European Union, or European Parliament rather, is voting on a resolution establishing a tribunal for Putin. Just kind of giving it the go ahead. Like this is going to happen. We don't know when. We don't know when we'll get a hold of him, but when we do, this is going to be waiting for him. So on Thursday, they're set to adopt a resolution at a plenary session in Strasbourg, which, among other things, will call for the swift establishment of a special tribunal on the crime of aggression against Ukraine. And that's really just kind of eats into that Ukraine started this talking point that, I think the only three people still spouting that horse shit are Tucker Carlson, Jimmy Dore, and Sidney Powell. Like, who the fuck is left carrying, Putin's balls across this finish line? But this will call for a complete establishment of a special tribunal for Putin as soon as possible. The draft resolution titled "On Ensuring Accountability and Justice in Response to Russia's Continued Attacks Against the Civilian Population in Ukraine." The text is, went out to the European Pravda, so supports the signature by the EU of the enlarged partial agreement on the special tribunal for crime of aggression against Ukraine, with a view to the EU becoming a full member of its management committee. So, all that said, what it means is they intend to have a big, generic kind of rando, one anyways against the crime of aggression. But we're adding a special addendum specifically for Putin as a human being, just to start off. We don't need to have the whole tribunal to figure out he's as guilty as he is. That's obviously established. He's said as much on many occasions. So we don't have
And
to.
nobody should be surprised that it's happening, shortly after Orban was kicked out.
Oh,
Orban was
yeah.
always the obstructionist on this kind of stuff. So,
Right.
the other thing that the European Union is doing, as I mentioned earlier, was the $90 billion loan. They've been very smart about that because this has been really controversial because a lot of like banks that hold oligarch money don't want to set a precedent that, hey, if your government gets involved in something that the West doesn't like, then we're going to seize your assets.
Right.
Even though Russian oligarchs basically are the government,
Yeah.
there is no sunlight between the two, between the Kremlin, and you can't be an oligarch without being in Vladimir Putin's
Without his
court. Right,
approval. Right. Yeah.
right, right, exactly. So what the European Union has done in another move related to this, which I think is very smart, was that what they did was they said, we are going to seize these assets of Russian oligarchs as collateral so that we're going to give Ukraine this money so that it can defend itself. But when the war ends, should reparations be established with the government in Moscow, we can maybe give these individuals their money back so that
Right.
it doesn't break down this banking trust that had a lot of the financial institutions scared that it would set this precedent. So very very smart move.
Yeah.
And again, I think just on the sheer fact that it's $90 billion euros. This war, I hope it doesn't, but
Mm-hmm.
they have the means. They have the means to keep fighting for a lot longer. So,
Mm-hmm. Well, and TWAPS, the seaport is in well, I'll show you. Hold on. This is it's looked like this for the last few days.
mhm.
And I think it's like Kate from Kharkiv on Blue Sky is just posting, like fire photo after fire photo, but it's the Ukrainians drones hit this key oil refinery out there and then hit it again. So they hit it 3 times, the 16th, the 20th, and the 28th, and it's just still burning. Like
Mhm.
it's gnarly. It sparked a large-scale blaze, prompting evacuations from nearby streets, Koshkina and Pushkina, with over 160 firefighters responding under tough conditions to basically stand there and watch. Like it's nuts.
Yeah.
Um, so the like, and then there was another report. Let me show you this one where yeah, here it is. This is the this is a different one. I just want to yeah, it's a Transneft pumping station that Ukraine hit that's 1,500 kilometers inside the country. And it's just like on and on. Like the Ukrainians are chipping away at the oil infrastructure of Russia. Now there is my current favorite conspiracy theory amongst the maggot class and their drift, meaning the people who have left, because of Epstein or whatever, is that that this is all a war against China, and that the U.S.'s backing of Ukraine under Biden and the U.S. attacking of Iran under Trump is us cutting them off from their two biggest buddies in the world. The Russians, their famous friendship with China, which involves China, of course, renaming parts of Russia back to their Chinese names. They're that close. We're so friendly. We're going to rename parts of your country because we plan on taking them back later. But also, Iran supplies 90% of their oil. Trump always screws this up that China gets 90% of their oil from the Strait of Hormuz from Iran. He keeps narrowing it down that Iran's giving them 90%. It's that 20% of the world's oil comes through there uh, through proxies, meaning China and people it has partnerships with, meaning Africa and other countries. 90% of it goes to China and its buddies, but only 40% of it goes to China. And China stockpiled 1.2 billion barrels of oil before the war started, which sounds like Trump was giving them a heads up. Or they have spies within the administration, or Elon Musk told them, or what have you. They've got a buddy in Palantir or something like that. But they clearly were like, oh shit, they're going to hit our main source. Now, they have hit the reserve tap part of that. They hit it a week ago. So they're not getting enough for their daily use. So they're tapping that 1.2 billion barrels. That's assuming, by the way, that their storage facilities are actually functional, which I do not assume because they've had problems with these in the past. They've had dudes sell off big portions of their oil and jet fuel and refill the tanks with water, with seawater. This has happened a bunch of times in China, and it would be no different right now, especially the larger it gets, the less of a chance they're going to use all of it. It's like if the United States, if we found out that there were 200 million barrels, of oil in our reserves that were actually fucking, coal, just stone, right? That we're filling the thing, but we never lower it enough to see that it's not as deep as we said, or it doesn't go because it's so big. At 1.2 billion barrels, like they're figuring nobody's checking. So they're siphoning this shit off and selling it to Vietnam and all that kind of stuff. But the idea is that Ukraine, on behalf of the EU and the United States, is our proxy to destroy Russia, which we baited into this war by wearing a short skirt and walking down the street at night, carrying a purse and not paying attention to our surroundings, like Sylvester Stallone in Nighthawks. And then the Iran war was part of the PNAC plan that was all along, but it's smarter than that. It's why they won't get mad about it, because we're really attacking Chinese proxy in this situation, meaning that both Iran and Russia are now pawns of China. Besides it being stupid, it still paints this picture of Russia being worthwhile as an ally, which I see no signs that it is.
they're not even good allies to Iran right now, in
Right.
the conflict there. So yeah, it's that's a ridiculous
Right.
conspiracy. I mean, that's just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
This strike though, the 1,500 kilometer deep strike. I mean that again,
Hmm.
it shows what I was saying earlier in that Ukraine is getting to a point where they can actually kind of provide their own weapons.
Hmm.
They've got their own cruise missile that competes with any cruise missile on the planet. Not exactly, but pretty
Right.
on par. Um, Western like
Yeah.
the Brits
Sorry.
and the French and our cruise missiles tend to fly faster and carry heavier warheads, if I understand
Right.
correctly. But yeah, it's perfectly fine, and they're producing. Every day they're producing one of some of these things, or they're just churning them out, and so I think we're going to see more of these deep strikes
Hmm.
into Russia. It's the
This is not
war
okay.
is not ending anytime
No.
soon, sadly,
Right.
unless Russia comes to its senses.
This is well inside Russia. This is the Tuops planet. This is a closer view of what's burning there. And the I'm always struck by how like maggots. I wonder if they thought they were going to be making these defensive statements about Donald Trump and Epstein and failed economy and a regime change war in the Middle East and all this stuff that they said was gone forever because he was going to drain the swamp and spank the deep state because daddy's home and all that horse shit about Trump. That I I don't. Do you think the Russians 4 years ago, 5 years ago, or even a year ago were like thinking that the Ukrainians would be able to strike this far into the country and cause a devastation of this magnitude with effectively maybe what $2,500 worth of gear for real?
I think probably the Flamingo's got a higher price tag than that, but
I don't
yeah, I
know. Was
mean,
it a flamingo
drones
that
and
struck it? Yeah, I don't know if it was the drone
I,
or
I'm
the
I'm
yeah.
I'm I'm betting it was a flamingo, but don't hold me to that exactly.
Let's say it's
But
fifty to $100,000 compared to the
yeah, I
damage.
mean,
It's like
no.
extraordinary, right?
Well, of course, they didn't think that they were going to that the Ukrainians would be able to fight back. I mean, they brought their dress uniforms with them when they were marching on Moscow. And got
Right.
absolute shellacking at the beginning of the war. Russians have always been very, very dismissive and
Hmm.
condescending to Ukrainians. They think Ukraine. I think I already told you that the story of that we had from Natalia Lutsenko last week,
Right.
uh, on or well the week before on the Edge when she was working in the UN, and
Hmm.
she had a Russian diplomat and come up to her and be like, "We don't understand why you Ukrainians are so reluctant. I mean, if you just made a couple of changes, you could make really good Russians." And to which
Oh my
Natalia was like,
God.
"We don't want to be Russian." So
Get fucked.
Moscow and the Russians have always had this really condescending attitude towards
Wow.
Ukrainians, and also the mentality. They really do have the mentality of like, you're just little Russians. You're just
Right.
good little. They do it to the Serbs too, as a matter of fact.
Hmm.
This kind of because they see themselves as the arbiter of what it is to be Slavic, what it
Right.
is to be Orthodox Christian. Um,
Yeah.
and
Which is
they have this
hilarious.
mentality, right? They have this mentality that they get to decide, how you're part of the Slavic world and part of the Orthodox world. And the Serbs, because of their kind of situation with their neighbors and this constant kind of fighting between in the Balkans, are a little bit more accepting of that relationship. But the Ukrainians, a long time ago, and I'm talking, you know, like
Hmm.
centuries, a long time ago, said, "No, we're different. We're not like you, and you don't get to tell us who you are. We are. You don't get to define us."
Right.
And that's why there's a book in the studio by Taras Shevchenko, who's kind of like a Ukrainian Shakespeare, or just a no a poet, a laureate, kind of a
Right.
national poet, and his book is all about like being Ukrainian and loving Ukraine and loving
Right.
not
What a
only the
nutty
land
concept.
but the culture. And yeah, and the Russians, hate them for it, and
Hmm.
because they really do literally see them as little Russians, Malorossiya, little Russia. And so, could they conceive of little Russia putting up a fight that absolutely has ground them into into the dirt,
Hmm.
and is now actually hurting them domestically? No, no, no
Yeah.
way whatsoever. So it's yeah, and
And
they're
yet,
and it's going to get worse, and it's going to get
mhm,
worse for the Russians. The Russians are not going to get stronger; they're going to get weaker. And the Ukrainians, meanwhile, are only going to get stronger. The issue at hand is territory,
right.
and if Russia can change something on
Yeah.
the ground militarily, and I don't know what it would be. Like we talk about them attacking the fortress cities or Sloviansk, or if they were to bring out some sort of secret weapon, or if they did some sort of tricky, maneuver on the ground, they could maybe grab more territory.
Right.
But I just don't see it happening, and I certainly don't see them taking huge chunks of Ukraine. I think they're
Agreed.
pretty much at their high water mark.
Hmm.
So the only question is how many more Ukrainians have to die.
Right.
It's great to see the Europeans finally getting their act together and starting to really lay into helping them. So we'll
Right.
see how it goes. But yeah, no, they certainly, I don't think Moscow or any Russian could have anticipated the way this has gone. I think it's been a massive shock to their system. And I think the end result of this war has already been decided. It's just a matter of how it shakes out. I don't know what it's going
Yeah.
to look like, but it's going to end with, a Russia will come off worse for having done this, and Ukraine will come off better for
Right.
having fought as hard as they have fought. And I think that's an inevitability. I don't know exactly what shape or form that comes in, but I think
Right.
it's been written. The conclusion of this conflict was written a long time ago. It's just a matter of, sadly, how much longer, how much more money, how many more people, how much more suffering,
Right.
do people have to go through before you know the Russians come to
Right.
their senses, as I say, and Putin's got to go. So
Yeah.
that's also a major factor.
Absolutely. So and thank you guys so much for hi chat room. I just thought I'd bring you guys in on the conversation a little bit because normally we get to on Saturdays have you guys be a part of the conversation when talking to Phil. Don't forget to subscribe to On the Edge, his show, as they're getting their, back on their feet. It's crucial that they have all the folks. And thanks, Boston Brian, for that. Slava Ukraine jumping in there and thanks for having Phil on your show as well and helping to
Yep.
get the message out there. Crucial,
Got
very
to got
crucial.
to remember to write to Brian soon.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, yeah. Uh, yeah,
Hmm.
no, this is already a done deal. just a matter of what it
Yes.
looks like in the end. And if you're looking for On the Edge, I have a channel set up on YouTube that is simply On the Edge, but I also put it out on my own
On
personal channel, and
Philip
that's where
it.
you'll
Yep.
yeah, with one L in Philip and two T's in it. They're all one word,
Yep.
and that's where we put a lot of stuff up.
That's right. So in the last few minutes, the minutes that I have you here, maybe we'll talk a little bit about the King's visit because of your famous "Keep Calm and Carry On" tattoo.
Well,
And
I'm a British citizen, so
that's right.
that's
You're a
I
dual
am
you're a dual citizen, right?
an American, but also a subject of His Majesty, which is I'm fine with. I can make peace with that. I can
Yeah, that's
walk
fine.
and chew gum.
I'm a sovereign of
Uh,
my own majesty. It's just
Fair
how I
enough,
roll.
but it's I know that Zelensky has responded to what Charles said in
Uh-huh.
it was in the House that Charles spoke, I believe. Yes,
Yep.
um, uh, because he did
How,
say I
it
didn't
was
see it
both.
because it was
He spoke to the
too
House.
late here,
Yeah, he
but
spoke to the House and
I
the
read the
Senate together.
transcript.
Yep.
Yeah, and he said, he did make the point that we've got to stand strong with Ukraine. So I know that was well appreciated here.
Oh, he was dunking on Trump all over the place.
Oh,
And one of the things I saw was the irony that we have, a country that broke with a monarchy to form a democracy headed by a would-be dictator right now, and then the monarch of that former country coming over and extolling the virtues of democracy. It was so fucking upside down,
yeah.
Stranger Things that
I love,
everybody
I
noticed.
love, I love the Magna Carta bit. I
Yeah,
loved the Magna Carta bit because if you know the history of the Magna Carta was written to put limits on the power of the monarch,
right.
the executive. The executive. There
Yeah,
was King John of Robin Hood fame was
right.
being a real asshole, and he was
Which is
prominaxy and all
just
that kind of
it's just
stuff.
the way lions are when you give them power, but that they haven't earned while their older brother is away at war.
Right. So so a bunch of I mean, this is the history of the Magna Carta is that a bunch of barons got together and said, you know, yes, you're still the monarch, but we're barons and we have our fiefdoms, and
Right.
this is as far as you can go, which is then the basis. And Charles pointed it out that over I don't know how many years and judgments in the Supreme Court that the Magna Carta was also mentioned because it's a progression,
That's
and
right.
the idea is that there can be no absolute monarch, that people have
They have to have a
rights that
say.
they have to
Well,
have a
well,
say. That's right. And to say that with Trump in the
right.
Oval, I just
But also,
chef's
like,
kiss.
there's also
And
the funny thing is,
I'm not a fan. And I'm not a fan of Charles. I don't dislike Charles, but I'm not a fan of
right.
Charles. I was all I was
Yeah.
deeply in love with Elizabeth, but Charles he's a fine monarch. He'll be a nice little transitional
Uh,
monarch.
to
But
William.
anyhow, whatever.
Right.
But so it's not like I'm getting
Sure.
out my pom poms and jumping up and down for Charles. But I have to admit, that
Right.
speech
And I think it
was
was like the
just,
the height of British irony. Like if you want to talk
yeah.
about like the culmination of the all of the irony of Monty Python's Flying Circus all slapped into one thing. It was the monarch coming over here and lecturing us on how to run a democracy. And it
And
actually
the
landing
passive,
because of the
yeah,
dickhead we have in charge.
and the passive aggressiveness of it too was so British as well.
Yeah.
It's like
Oh my God.
if you know how to speak, if you
And that
can
was
read the subtext,
right. Well, that's the
which
problem is
wasn't hard, which wasn't actually hard because Charles amazingly was pretty blunt about it. But like
but Trump is
that's
so
how
fucking dense. He's
yeah,
not going to, unless
he's
somebody
done.
tattled and told him what it meant, what he said, not just what he said, but what he was really saying. Like Trump would have to have it spelled out to him because he does.
Yeah,
There's no way he listened to that and when he's talking about me, I'm a terrible person. Like he would just go, he's my friend. He likes me a lot, very highly respected. Like that's where his fucking head was. If he even
Yeah.
watched it at all, he was napping. Get the hell out of here.
No,
Like
he
the idea
wanted
that
that. He wanted the royal visit, and he wanted the photo.
yeah,
That's it. It's the
fucking
same reason why he went, on his last visit during Elizabeth's reign. I remember this distinctly, was that he insisted that it be a state visit,
oh,
and that meant that
right,
he gets to meet the monarch and he gets to inspect the troops with the monarch,
right.
which of course he then completely screwed up with protocol. But
Well, he
insisted
jumped
on it.
in front of
Yeah,
Camilla
and he
and
touched her. And he
yeah,
touched her. He touched her. He touched her back. You don't
right.
touch the monarch. You do not. I mean, back in
Well,
the
he
day, you
bumped
weren't
into
allowed to
Charles
turn.
because he was on the wrong side of the soldier for the thing. He was like, "Oh shit, I'm supposed to be over here." Like it was so fucking pathetic. And then like the comparison, not just the content of the speeches, but the delivery itself was as stark as anything
Yeah,
else. Because here's Charles reading a witty speech, well put together, clearly partially memorized, if not fully memorized, and just using the notes for reference, and Trump up there looking like every word that followed was produced by autofill and he had no idea it was coming. Like there were several words that looked like they were punching him in the face. It's
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
It,
Yeah, it was
it
good.
right. So this is it was a joy to behold in that regard. I'm still full on no kings kind of a dude, but again, it's not
Fair
our
enough.
king, so I don't worry about it. Like if a king from
Well, it's
someplace
also
else
not
comes
our.
over,
It's not our. Yeah, it's not our society.
nope,
Britain is structured in a very, very different way than the United States is,
yeah,
and for
it's
them, I
adorable.
mean, there
Yep,
are people are Republicans and they want to get rid of the monarchy. I hear that argument all the time. Look, I spent enough time when I lived in London, in British pubs debating this. But Britain is not the United States. It is
yeah.
set up very, very differently. So a monarch there,
That's why
it
that's why
serves
I
a
say
completely different purpose.
everybody wants to be like Mike. I'm telling you, the UK, just go back to being England and Ireland and Scotland. The concept of a United Kingdom is a little silly at this point. You don't have an overlapping tax structure. You basically have a security guarantee because you're attached as an island, but it's not really a union. You have distinct societies, distinct governances. Like just have a treaty. It's not the unite. You're not united as a kingdom under the king. Fuck off with that nonsense. It's also like the European Union. That's them trying to be like the United States, and they aren't because there's a much bigger difference between Germany and France than there is between Wisconsin and fucking Minnesota. So just
Yeah,
knock it off. Be countries. It's okay. It's okay that you guys that there are genetic differences between the
yeah,
Danish and the French and the Nordics and the fucking British. It actually exists, and you're allowed.
and yet. Yes, I hear your point, and yet at the same time, I think the idea of a common Europe is a really, really good one, because otherwise they're going
Sure.
to start fighting one another at the drop of a
Yeah,
hat. But if
I
you find
agree.
if only just an economic reason to tie those countries
I
together,
agree. Again,
then
call it the
uh,
European Alliance instead of the
whatever.
European Union, because a union means you guys are fornicating and making a Europe baby. And that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about them aligning with each other for shared interests and then maintaining their own cultures and governments where appropriate. Come on.
And
Like,
I look forward to the day when Ukraine is part of the EU, because that's going to happen.
right. Well, they're going
Yeah,
to need them,
that's
and
going.
and
That's going.
Germany does not
Yeah,
because Ukraine will be a better ally and an economic engine than Germany is, which is why they drag their heels on the Russian oil for a while. I'm convinced because they could see that writing on the wall. Anyways, Phil, thank you for joining me today. I greatly appreciate it. Get some rest, my friend. I know it's nighttime where you are, and I will see you on
yep,
Saturday. Appreciate you
indeed.
dropping in, and we will see you on the other side.
All
All right.
right, take care. Talk on
Cheers.
Saturday. See you.
Excellent. All right. There he goes, ladies and gentlemen. The lovely and talented Where did my chat go in this window? It should be there. I don't understand. I don't know why. Okay, there's the stream chat. And there's this copy of the stream chat. The copy of the stream chat is just fine. And the stream chat itself, there it is. Now it works. The hell. Just need to be poked, I guess. Who was shouting at me about, like, oh, for fuck's sake, the United Kingdom ain't us? Shove off. The Irish aren't English. The Scottish aren't Irish or English. There's a lot of interfucking that happened, and a lot of it wasn't consensual. Look, I get where you guys are coming from, but again, it's an alliance, not a union, and words matter. They matter. Right? All right. Yeah, apparently I poked some people. I don't know why. Oh, we're still on the others. Yeah, we're on the screen. Okay. Popped up. I don't know why it was coming up on there and not over here, but whatever. Jog on. You will have to get the fuck out of here, mate. Yeah? I'm going to fucking shoot you, Tommy. And Wales. Yes, exactly. Wales is a distinct country. Ask Anthony Hopkins. And the lovely girl I met when I was traveling in England, who we had our own alliance for just one night, but it was a beautiful thing. The lovely girl from Wales. That's all I'm saying. The rest is none of your business. It was mutually lovely. Oh, I guess missed across the pond. Anyways, yes. Where do the Polish fit in this? I'm fairly certain they are Polish and Poland is their country. Now, Germany would argue that there were Germanic tribes that lost their land because of the Romans that became the Poles and all that kind of stuff. But I think that ship has sailed. Sorry. Okay, now let's shift to the news of the day. Now, what background do I want for this? It's very hard. So let's go to here. This one. Do we go to here? There we go. That's my news background. Welcome to the show. It's House Parks Mornings Mega Worldwide. Like, subscribe, give a thumbs up, support the show, etc., etc., etc. So a couple of things that popped out today, which I thought were particularly hilarious, and are a joy to behold. Not the least of which is this little gem. Hold on, I've got to clear some of the crap off the screen. You guys remember this lady? She would commonly be referred to, I think, as Slam Blondie. This lady right here. So she pulled a Matt Gaetz, or Trump pulled a Matt Gaetz on her behalf recently by having her bug out before the trial could come up, or before her testimony before Congress figured, hey, we can really, we'll shut this whole Epstein thing down for shizzle. And she won't have to talk at all because I'll just claim privilege and whatnot. And then, oops, even with, now let me talk to you a little bit something, because this ties into the Supreme Court case that softened parts of the Voting Rights Act today, which everybody is semi-panicking about, which you have nothing to panic about, by the way. This is not good for Republicans, even if they thought it would be. It's not. We'll get to that in just a moment. Don't let me forget, because it's easy to get distracted by the Slam Blondie and the Epstein parade. Keep this in mind, by the way, when these idiots start talking about how Biden officials avoided their subpoenas and whatever, and that Jim Jordan has still never lived up to his, and yada yada yada. So the expectation that they're actually going to do anything about it is, I mean, normally I would say it's not going to happen, because she's protecting Trump, and that's what they're going to do. But the problem is, there are enough Republicans that want the Epstein thing behind them, and they want to distance themselves from the Epstein thing, that they might be more than happy to throw her under the bus to do that. Which, by the way, there is no way you do this without Trump catching a face full of excrement. There's no way. So, Democrats on the House Oversight Committee filed contempt charges against Pam Bondi after she failed to comply with the subpoena to give a deposition on their handling of the Epstein file, on her Epstein files. On Wednesday, Oversight Committee ranking member Robert Garcia said Bondi illegally defied our committee, skipped her deposition, and refused to cooperate. Bondi has extensive personal knowledge about the Trump administration's handling of the Epstein files, and regardless of her job title, her testimony and cooperation are crucial. Survivors deserve answers, and the American people deserve the truth. Which is exactly why Trump was like, beat it. If I fire her, then she can claim ignorance, even though she was there during a year of the most egregious, shell game around the Epstein files, right? He never want Epstein behind me. I think that's a good move, John. I think you're right. Although he could be at any time because he's still alive. Anyways, I told you guys that is my preferred conspiracy theory. We all get one we're allowed to play with. That's going to be mine. Sorry. End of story. Okay. Happy birthday, Jacqueline. Look at you, 40. Happy birthday to Jacqueline. Yeah. Anyways, the Republicans are trying to reschedule her deposition rather than hold her in contempt. That's it's not happening. There is really no way that okay, jump back in here. So do I have to stream chat? Does it have to refresh every time? Let's see. Do you have to turn it off and back on and then it'll wake up? Is that what does it? Come back here, you silly thing. Maybe it just takes a while. That's odd because it pops right up in the other. I know. I've got an idea. Okay, take this, duplicate onto the horizontal campus, the canvas. There we go. And take this, and then we stretch it out. And look at this, and now that works so much better. And then keep that, and get rid of this one, which doesn't work and is very odd. Go away. So it doesn't double up. There we go. Excellent. Okay. So yay! Look at that. Now it works. Why must it be so difficult? I don't know. So the other thing is because we live in the upside down right now. And I have to say, when it comes to this particular congressperson, she probably shouldn't bring up lying down. I'm just this is Boebert astonishes as she helps Dem torpedo a GOP bill. I need to lie down. Really, I didn't realize your date was on campus. Is he around? Okay. House Republicans suffered a massive headache on Tuesday, evening as far-right Rep. Lauren Boebert, who had to be yelled at in the Situation Room to change her vote about the discharge petition about the Epstein files that every Republican except one ended up voting for, even though none of them would touch the discharge petition, which is very odd. It's like once they had to vote for it, then they voted for it. But yeah. Joined forces with Democrats to sink a House rule that would get the annual Farm Bill passed. And that reads funky. So they were trying to use a House rule to keep the Farm Bill from passing, from bringing it to a vote when they knew it would pass. And she joined with them to override that. And right now, the vote is like one vote in either direction. I filed multiple non-controversial amendments to the Farm Bill to help rural Coloradans, Boebert posted on X. Rep. Joe Neguse asked the Rules Committee to consider them on the House floor. The Republicans on the committee unanimously voted against them, and they will not even be considered for a floor vote. Farmers and ranchers in my district are counting on me to be their voice in D.C., and our leadership is not letting me do my job. I am a no on the rule. The plot twist in the whip count drew immediate reaction from political observers. Boebert says she's a no on the rule after her amendment, offered by a Democrat, was voted down by Republicans on the Rules Committee. Things are getting very weird. This rule looks dead on the floor if the leadership could ever get it there, meaning get it to a full vote because it collapsed on there. Yeah, Boebert is praising Democrats on the Rules Committee, and I'm going to need to lie down, said Michael Garcia. Oh, so he's Sorry, Eric Garcia. Garcia said I need to lie down, not Boebert. Okay, well that's kind of important to the story, as it were. Anyways, kind of hilarious and indicative of, in a lot of ways, of where things are going to go. Because you know how you guys. You know, I said that when they are forced to actually govern, it is amazing how much Republicans start sounding like Democrats, right? I've told you guys this multiple times. Like, this is a crucial aspect of this. Like, they have to, uh, you know, when it came, like the biggest one I think was Snap, when Josh Hawley was decrying the value of Snap when it was being shut down, right? Somebody said, but any great ideas that come from Scotland, Ireland, or Wales become British. If it is a shit idea, it's Scottish, Irish, or Welsh. True fact. Yeah, that's the same thing that maggots do with Trump in office. If Biden does something they don't like, it's Biden trying to destroy the country. If Trump does something they don't like, it's the federal government. You mother's ass. So that was another aspect of this. Okay. One of the other stories that came out was about Cole Allen, and Ken Klippenstein wrote a piece where I got to tell you, we'll get into this a little bit. Let's be abundantly clear. Cole Allen, like Mangione and these other fucking awful, murderous maniacs, who I am 100% against. I do. Let's be abundantly clear for anybody that I lose in this situation where people start yelling about how somebody deserved to be shot in the back of the fucking head. I am against the death penalty, and I'm certainly against the death penalty without a trial. If that holds with any of you, then shut the fuck up about excusing any political assassin, even if you like you like who their target was. It's fucking nonsense. You're just opening a goddamn Pandora's box of violence, bloodshed, and your total disregard for human life is no better than the person that they were killing. Period. End of story. It is not a self-defense situation. You are not being, threatened or killed by, or threatened with death by somebody and standing up against them in that moment, sneaking up on somebody or walking up to them as they're walking in and out of a building or running through a fucking hotel and shooting somebody is not justice. It's not righteous. It's not real. And it's totally ineffective. None of these things have ever changed the system. As a matter of fact, they kind of have a 9/11 effect. They cause a jingoistic circling of the wagons around that person or that idea. Right? So did it make it, insurance companies lower their prices? Get the fuck out of here. Kind of like bombing Iran. Precisely. You can still hate Iran and go, this is a bad idea. This is terrible. Violates all the rules of humanity. So no, you're not ever gonna move me on that thought. It's not gonna happen. There is no situation where I'm gonna support somebody walking up behind somebody and blowing their brains out. Put them put that person in a cell and leave them there. I would rather protect my ethics, morals, identity, and belief system by living them than tossing them aside whenever I'm frustrated and becoming the very thing that I accuse others of being, which is, murderous with the intent of making a point. It's silly. Meanwhile, let's see if the fight folks on the maggot side and the we need fighters crowd on our side, see if you see anything reflected in the words of Cole Allen. In this, Ken Klippenstein went through a bunch of his stuff, And it turns out that Cole Allen hated the Democratic Party too. He was an unaffiliated voter. He was not party aligned. He gave $25 to Kamala, and everybody's jumping on that. Is that a CNN background? No, it's a make fun of CNN background, I think. But point being, here, let's take a look at some of what he said and see if it sounds familiar to anybody. Okay. All right. Can I blow this up? Will it allow me? Is it just okay? Where are you? Nope. I hate that about the sub and the stack. Okay. Trump called him radicalized. Joe Gruder's the RNC chairman, said he was a radicalized leftist. By the way, because he believes that there are no right-wing Christian haters, like haters of Christians, which there are a shit ton, including the sitting president. Acting Attorney General said, Todd Blanche said investigators were probing any connection he may have had to left-wing groups and looking for accomplices and co-conspirators and blah, 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 blah. But Trump was like, lone wolf. Anyways, moving on. So they're tying him with, let's see, even hyper-liberal MS Now. Ken Delanian parrots the administration line, claiming Allen is one of several attackers on the far left fringes. Okay, first of all, Thomas Crooks was not left. Neither was the shooter at Trump's golf course. He was not left wing. Right now, it's 2 out of 3. And the argument about whether this guy is actually left wing is a bit absurd. He just sounds like one of these tap out motherfuckers. And by the way, this is exactly why I want everybody to vote. Because once people stop participating in the process, they come up with solutions like this. And it gets real terrible real fast. Okay. Allen and his social media. Okay. Consider his social media posts. If where he's talking about see if this sounds familiar. If you've seen anybody write something similar or seen or maybe even written something similar yourself. If this is the extent to which the Democratic leadership is willing to lead, it is time to form an actual third party. At this point, might be faster to replace with a new party. Call it the Do Something Party. I don't know. If this is the level of analysis coming out of the leaders of the Dem Party, might need an entirely new party, to be honest. I'm just referring, I think, to Schumer in that one. I swear the Democratic Party does not comprehend the concept of priorities. Which, by the way, take that with a grain of salt, because it came from a guy who prioritized violence over other means. Dude had a fucking master's degree in computer science. I'm just saying, maybe there was a better use of his brain. He was not a shooter, never discharged his weapon, quite sure. Oh, that doesn't matter. He carried it with the intention of doing it again. Yeah, exactly. This has got Cenk and Anna written all over it. There was another shooter that justified what he was doing because of TYT, and like almost identical shit. Like somebody's got to do something, right? And what's that something is somebody needs to bum rush into a crowded area with guns so that they or other people get killed. Fucking dumb. Anyways, is there no such thing as a vote of no confidence for Senate Minority Leader? Schumer is acting like an RPG, a role-playing game player, who hoards every single potion, power-up, and consumable he comes across because maybe I'll need them later. Schumer's assignment was not turned in on time, he said on April 8th. This is the same shit you hear out of TYT all the time. What's the point? Yeah, I do think there was also a possibility of the potential attempt at suicide by cop. I wouldn't rule that out. And he's not, I mean, if you were going to check out that day, I can understand why you were like, well, I guess I could just go to jail forever and blow it off, right? What's the difference? But TYT and that crowd have always talked about like just the fight mentality, which I push back on all the time. Not because it's a stupid analogy for the actual circumstance, is that it's childish and plays right into the hands of violent perpetrators. Follow it up with, we need fighters, like Timothy McVeigh and the Unabomber. We need fighters like the guy at Ruby Ridge who fought for the Second Amendment by getting himself, his wife, and his kid killed, right? Fuck off. We need smart people who can not only legislate, but also can communicate the purpose of that legislation to people who might not automatically be on board. Fighting with them does not make them join your side. Wouldn't it be better? Now, please feel free to call me naive about this, and I'm not saying it won't take work. But wouldn't the best president we could possibly have think in terms of how do I convince the MAGA faithful that I'm here to do some good in the world and that they will benefit from it? Now, you could, in a Schadenfreude kind of passive aggressive way, bring up the fact that red states suck off the tea to blue states, and they use more Medicare, Medicaid, and special education funds than blue states do, and blue states pay more in taxes than red states do. They leech off them, and they wouldn't have any of the programs that keep the rest of their state afloat if it wasn't for the people that they're hating on. So maybe they ought to tap the fucking brakes on shitting on Democrats in big cities, because if that tap ever stops, they're screwed. Sure, you could bring that up. But also, would it possibly be worthwhile if eventually maggots in general started understanding that even the people that vote against them, like me, don't mean them ill? I don't want them to die unvaccinated or of an illness they cannot afford to treat. I want their kids, no matter what opinion I have of that kid's parents, to have at least a baseline education that they can build off of. If you want to homeschool your kid, here's how it works. Send them to public school, and then when they come home, add on top of that, instead of just reinventing the fucking wheel and trying to teach them creation science. It's a thought. And if you think the school is turning them into an automaton, guess what? You're their parents. Do better. Where were you when they were being turned into a robot? Also, I'd like to point out that more than likely, the people who say that, all of them actually, went to fucking public school, and they're like, public school just turns out robots. So then why the fuck am I listening to you? It's like that John Kirikow CIA asshole who's like, I'll tell you the inside stuff, but what's a CIA agent? Always a CIA agent. You're like, well then, dude, why the fuck would I be listening to you? What? Everything's a psyop except you? Fuck off. So, point being, is that Cole Allen's attack was not a, I'm going to strike a blow for fucking like healthcare or no more new wars, right? Like, yeah, Gino's saying, and what do churches do? Well, that's it's an excellent point. Let me bring that up if I may. If you have to have the Bible in school, your church sucks. That's what Sunday school's for. If you want to study the Bible after school or after work because it's that important to you, then fucking do it. And especially if you don't trust public education, you think it's all run by fucking, I don't know, a Jewish Illuminati cabal of UN secretaries general. Why would you hand the Bible over to them and go, teach my kid what's in this book? Like, are you nuts? It makes no sense. Like, you drill past, like, an inch below the surface, there is nothing. Like, I find it maddening. I really do. It's so dumb. If you believe church is important, then be important to your church. If you think Christianity has value, then embody it in what you do. This is not difficult. And the idea that your kid goes to school and learns all kinds of stuff and comes home, you can have a conversation. I have a conversation occasionally with my son when they talk about stuff in school, and I don't know how broad the conversation was in the classroom because I wasn't there, but I know what he took away from it. So I will kick the tires on the idea that he got at school to make sure if it is good, he understands it and really absorbs it, and if it's not, he's got a good counterpoint to it, and if there's more to the story, he's informed. Because there aren't enough hours in the day just to teach US history, much less the 1 hour you get, you know, every day or 3 days a week, depending on how they schedule it at school, to do that, right? You've only they can't possibly fit it all in, so it should be a starting point, not the end. This is also a problem they have with Republicans really have a problem with equality or equity and them being bad words. Where in America we want everybody to have the same ability to reach the starting line. Getting across the finish line is up to you, but nobody should have like fucking ball and chain attached to their legs in normal, in normal life. If you fucked up, you fucked up. You got to carry that with you. That's your life. But your parents' net worth shouldn't reflect on the chances you get in a democracy. They just shouldn't. And if there's kids that don't get that, we should do everything we can to make sure that those kids have a chance to live up to their full potential. Not just because we're fucking bleeding heart liberals who, want to take from other people's kids and give it to these kids because the parents are fuck ups over here. No kid is responsible for their parent. Parents are responsible for their kids. But a kid isn't, if they're born to a fuck up, it's not their fault. And that's where we can take a responsibility and make sure that another, criminal, loser, leech on society, whatever you're worried about, doesn't occur because we have the ability, the means, and the wherewithal as the richest country in the world to actually take care of these things. So when it comes to the Cole Allens and the Luigi Mangionis of the world, the primary aspect of these folks is that they have given up on voting and actual participation, or they are frustrated by the lack of action, ironically, in this case, by the people who are in the minority, because voters put them in the minority. Voters put Dems in the minority. For the record, 6 million of our voters stood down last time and handed Donald Trump the football, the nuclear codes, the budget. And anybody who's like, yeah, if Kamala was in there, we would have attacked Iran. We would have, snatched the leader of Venezuela. We'd be threatening Cuba and Greenland and Canada. We'd have a $1.5 trillion military budget. If you're saying that, you're either insane or you're covering your ass. And more than likely, that's what it is. You voted for Trump in secret, you voted third party because you're a petulant child, or you didn't vote at all. And now, looking back, you have a guilty conscience, and instead of going, I fucked up, and I'm not going to fuck up again, and allowing regret and shame to shape your life as it should, you're shrugging it off and saying, well, two legs in the same pair of pants. And by the way, I want to thank the maggots who are in the chat today. It's really great when we have trolls because you guys spread us out into the algorithm in a way that, we can't do normally. But in particular, I think I just saw when Democrats love criminals and illegals, which is just a rubber stamp statement. So maybe I'm talking to a bot right now, from Donald Trump. And again, Donald Trump just pardoned one of the biggest drug dealers in the world and sent him back to his country so that he could help run a crypto firm with his son. So the idea that Trump was best friends with Jeffrey Epstein for 27 years plus. They may still talk regularly because again, I don't think he's dead, but because that's my favorite conspiracy theory. So, and insofar as illegals, the daughter of the head of the Congo bought several condos in Trump buildings with millions of dollars of money that was stolen from the Congolese people, and did that illegally. So she was here as I guess, a legal permanent resident under false pretenses, all that stuff that Donald Trump's trying to overturn, buying multiple units in his uh, in his buildings, and he while going, the people of the Congo, the people of the Congo, it's the Congo. They're sending their worst. They're coming over here in canoes. They're rowing here from the Congo and running across the southern border. Meanwhile, he's selling them $1 million condos in his buildings. The violent leadership that kills their own people, which is, by the way, exactly why people flee the Congo. That if you want to look at why people would leave the Congo and seek asylum in the United States, one of the big reasons is the leadership and the fact that they're suctioning all the money out and using it for illegal shit, including buying condos in Trump's buildings. Also, Donald Trump never kicked Epstein out of Mar-a-Lago, not once. And again, to the maggots in there, goony goo goo, right? I think it's goony goo goo, isn't it? What the fuck does goony goo goo mean? That for all the maggots in there, I just have one question. I would love for you to answer it. How long would it have taken you to figure out that Jeffrey Epstein was a pedophile? How long? If you meet him at a party, you're dangling there for a little while. You're actually around for a bit, and there he is. And just how long would it take, maggots? How long would it take you to figure out that Epstein was a pedophile? Just give me a timeline. One Howard Nutlick? Is that a unit of measurement? I don't actually expect the maggots to answer, but I would love to hear that. When I'm at the No Kings rally and those folks show up, I always ask them, and they all say, I'd know in 5 minutes. Well, then why did it take Trump 27 years? How? I mean, is your excuse he's just a shit judge of character? Well, then what does that say about his cabinet, who are also, by the way, friends of Epstein? They don't care? Yep, 1/5 of a Scaramucci. There you go. Yep, Eddie Murphy bit. That's exactly right. 0.3 Scaramucci's right. They just seem afraid to answer it, because they know the answer doesn't bode well for Trump. It's pretty goddamn obvious, right? And the other question I have is, why were Donald Trump's two best friends in the whole world, the people he had the closest relationship with, by his own admission, the closest friends he has ever had, both dead pedophiles, allegedly dead? Roy Cohn, who again famously said when he was dying of AIDS and a reporter asked him, what will you say? People say that, what's your answer to people knowing that Roy Cohn is gay? Because he loved talking about himself in the third person. And Roy Cohn said, Donald Trump's mentor and friend said, Roy Cohn, speaking of himself in the third person, gee, I wonder where Trump picked that up. Roy Cohn is not gay. Roy Cohn is a straight man who fucks boys. That was the quote from Roy Cohn. Donald Trump's close friend, who introduced him to another guy who was his close friend, Jeffrey Epstein. And they were thick as, well, I was going to say thieves, but pedos during the 90s and early 2000s. And Trump only started distancing himself once he got busted, but he still came to the house. The other thing, by the way, and this is only because of how it affects maggots, is that they're both Jewish, and then his daughter marries Kushner and converts, and the idea that that Bibi Netanyahu can whisper in Trump's ear and turn him into a Manchurian candidate because he's a weak, dough-headed asshole, which true, is a little bit of a cop out too, isn't it? I mean, Trump pushed back against it, didn't he? Yeah. So, Roy Cohn also taught Trump to never pay his bills. Yeah, well, he also told him to never admit guilt, which is really not Christian. Also, that goes to the Christian folks again. I've got my family Bible. It's upstairs. I've shown my Masonic Bible that I have just to irritate Candace Owens, but I have the same one that she thinks was like a discovery. It's a great reference guide. And by the way, complete. That unlike Donald Trump's Bible, there's no missing passages. They didn't have to edit it. But you can also recognize someone who truly believes their Christian faith versus somebody who's just posturing, right? And no one postures worse than Donald Trump at that. And this idea that, I think some people have a problem understanding that Donald Trump is a faux Christian in a very functional way. There are a bunch of these like traveling evangelicals. I've mentioned them before, the kind of like road preachers that roll through Christian churches, and every, couple of months, you'll have this guy roll in, and yeah, Russell Brand's another phony. Yes, and I do question his Christianity. It seems timed very much like someone on death row. And quoting scripture is very different than living it. And a lot of these assholes, the Antichrist is going to be great at quoting scripture, which is how we know Donald Trump is not the Antichrist. He's trying. He's the Timu Antichrist. But yeah, he's not going to. No. He's not good looking and charming enough to be the Antichrist. There's too much work involved. It requires too much book study. He's not going to do it. But you can spot somebody who lives their values as opposed to sells the idea of their values. Yes? That's not all of us Democrats are, not all of us Democrats are godless heathens. We own Bibles too. This is true. Some of us have actually read them all the way through. It's also partially why we don't buy into the whole Judeo-Christian storyline that Ted Cruz likes to push. No, there's a big, the church I grew up in was just kind of your standard run of the mill. It's a church. It's a Christian church. It wasn't like Baptist, Evangelical, Lutheran, Second Presbyterian, any of these kind of like everybody gets a team jersey. I'm second. The Second Baptist are across the street. If you ever go to, there's a in Coleman, Alabama, there is a street that has more churches on it than any other street in the world, including Vatican City. And it's just these little hut-like churches, but they're all like First Baptist, Second Baptist, Third Baptist, Fourth Baptist, Second Lutheran, Third, Episcopalian. It's like these, and they're across the street from each other. Like the First Baptist and the Second Baptist just walk out and go, "Fuck you," and the other goes, "Yeah, well, we're Second Baptist, so fuck you," right? Yeah, it has over 200 churches. That's right, and the one street. I shot a movie there with my dear friend Robert Hall, who's no longer with us. And we went down there, and my church didn't have any of those, those variances at all. It was just kind of like a building, and we do church, and then Sunday school, and then Wednesday service. Sometimes you'd have a Sunday night service, and then Wednesday fellowship. That was basically the run of it. And then have Sunday school before church. So the kids would come in early, the parents would drop them off. They'd eat food before service, so nobody's belly would be growling. And then, But occasionally we would get a preacher who would roll through and give kind of his suitcase sermons, right? Thursday was youth teen group. Wednesday was kind of that. They split us up. But Mooney Girl, that's basically, yeah, like some did it in different. I mean, the room, you're going to use it, you know. So they would roll through and give their suitcase, lecture, sermon, and then they would sell stuff out of their suitcase. And I at one point, I asked my mom to buy me a cassette tape set based on this one preacher's sermon about the lies of carbon-14 dating. It was all about how dinosaurs and men lived together and stuff like that. When I was like 10, I think I was 10, maybe 9, something like that. And it wasn't because I necessarily believed it. It was just cool. It was like buying audio. We didn't have a TV, and so audio cassettes and vinyl LPs were my only listening pleasures in Kentucky. So I was like, I'll get this thing. Yeah, it's 12 cassettes in a big fucking holder, right? And I would just listen to them like chapters, but it sounded like it was like listening to old radio stories. So it sounded cool. But I was kind of like, well, I mean, obviously dinosaurs and people weren't alive at the same time. Get the fuck out of here, you know. But I was like 9, 10 years old, right? So the point being is that, you know, our church didn't have any kind of those like, we're different Christians than you guys. We're just kind of like, we're all just kind of nice. Just be better, will you? Just don't be an asshole. I'm going to say asshole, so sorry. You know, that was it. But the evangelical movement was just growing right about that time. It really burst onto the scene in the early 80s. And it was very 80s. It was very much like the sales pitch. Because once you moved, you know, it was cable television that created the first mega churches. First, cable access, which all Sunday was just given to churches. Even though they could have set up their own thing tax-free, we still had to give them that shit, right? So nobody could do a Sunday show on cable access because it was always taken over by the churches, right? Here, churches split over kind of inner drama. Yeah, unlike the Middle East. So the point being is that it became a sales arm. They recognized that if you could, you know, that's where we got the Jim and Tammy Faye Bakers. That's where we got Ozzy Osbourne's Miracle Man. It's where we got Leper Messiah from Metallica. It was in reference to these, you know, these mega church evangelicals who grew up out of cable TV. You no longer had to have a broadcast antenna. And you were tax-free. So, you know, Copeland started his own ministries, put TV shows on, doesn't pay a fucking dime in taxes for the money they make on it. They sell all kinds of shit, not just Bibles and which should be given away for free. I personally think that you should. Yeah, by the way, yeah, if you're a troll, please give a thumbs down to the stream if you haven't already. Yeah, Miracle Man, that's when I fell in love with Zakk Wylde's playing. Holy shit. What a great album. No Rest for the Wicked. I gotta say, I love No More Tears and all that stuff, but Ozzy's most solid through and through album, like all killer, no filler. Yes, I'm so upset that the trolls are here. Oh my God, I'm emotionally distraught. How will I ever take their criticisms and live with myself? I'm sorry, just getting upset at trolls is so 2005. Anyway, so my point, if I have one, and I think that I do, was that there became this performative version of Christianity that had some dollar signs behind it. It was beyond just a tax break. It went into a money-making industry because just, you know, Glenn Beck, one of the reasons why he's trying to dump his entire model and move to a religious model is so that he doesn't have to pay taxes, even though it's bullshit. And I've told you guys that I'm more than happy to settle into my Reverend Gene Scott years, just, you know, with a horse farm full of, you know, former Playboy playmates sitting in a rocking chair with a chalkboard, just talking about one Bible verse a day. We're in the money. I mean, come on. You know, great job if you can get it, right? Ka-ching. Every church is a soap opera behind the scenes. I think some churches are soap operas in front of the scenes, in the pews. We used to have a family that, there were two families that were they bristled at each other. I won't name them because that would be rude, but you'll probably recognize them if you ever went to Christian church when you were a kid. One was the family that didn't sing because they didn't think hymns were right, that it was material glorification. So they would pray and they would listen to the sermon, but they didn't sing. And then the other family, they had the husband who sang the bass part, and the wife who sang the really loud part, and the kids who basically slept or farted through the whole thing. And so you would hear, I will cling to the old rugged cross. That couple, you know that couple? All right, yeah. So they were, but it was all, the irony is that sometimes if our car was fucked up, which happened a lot, we would stand out at the end of our driveway, which was about a mile away from our house, and wait for one or either of these families, depending on who we called that day, to pick us up and take us to church and then drop us off because they both lived that way and church was that way. So we were between them. So we would stand at the end of the driveway like kids waiting for the fucking school bus. Mama sang bass. Sorry, daddy sang bass, mama sang tenor. Yeah, that's exactly it. That's it. Yeah. Um, Onward, Christian soldiers, marching as to war with the cross of Jesus. Catholic Church had those folks too. I don't doubt it. Yeah. Did she sing the quiet part loud? No, I think that's just her on Facebook now. Yeah. When I got my license, I had to pick up a kid who went to our school and church. Yeah. Church of the Subgenius. I'll have you know that I was taught, I don't know about you, but I was taught in Sunday school to, be as Jesus-like as you possibly could be. And since I couldn't magically create fish and bread, I was like, well, the one thing I can do is that Jesus was irritating. He knew the scriptures better than the deacons. So I was like, okay, that I can do. I don't have a TV. I'm out in the fucking sticks. And like Abraham Lincoln, who also is from Kentucky, along with, Muhammad Ali and George Clooney and Johnny Depp and me. Obviously, there's something in the water. He taught himself, to read and speak another language and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, I'm studying the shit out of this thing. I'm going to get it all down. I went to church camp every year. And, great times, great times. I'm just saying. I think it was Alan Watts who said that, Christianity is the highest form of kink because nothing's kinkier than making sex dirty, right? Hence the when you're all like church sleepovers, lock-ins. Come on. Did you try to walk on water? No, but I did skip rocks like a son of a bitch. So point being is that I read the Bible quite thoroughly. I'm very proud of that fact. And then I was like, oh, you don't actually want to. Hi. Well, thank you. My girl. It's my girl. But you're my girl. I can't give you the Forrest Gump love. Beautiful lady. How was your workout? Well, that's good. Instead of taking it easy, you're actually pushing, right? Sure. No, I understand it's a balance, but yeah, I'm just saying. Yes, I'm impressed. That's all I'm saying. My girl went to the gym, even though for the current unpleasantness. So, love you. Is there a cat down here that I can show these people? No, they're all upstairs. Okay. Well, they say hi, by the way. Wait, is Hal Jesus? No, but we're all children of God. If one is, we all are. I think that's the rule. I loved Alan Watts. I used to listen to him on KPFK in LA. Oh, Chip is? Well, hold on. We haven't seen him in a bit. I might need a dolly to bring him in. Talk amongst yourselves. So I have a. For those of you that don't know, I have a domesticated panda, and his name is Chip. And he doesn't. And please do not fat shame him. Summer does it all the time, right, buddy? Hold on, buddy. Oh, gotcha. Oh boy, it's a boy. It's just a boy. Don't get freaked out because there's a fan up there. You're okay. Okay. You're okay. You okay? Okay, buddy. He's all right. It's just a boy. It's a big boy. He's a big boy. This is Chip. Chip is a foster fail who was dying when we got him because his ass was broken. Sorry to break hippo laws on you, buddy, but hang out. But he literally was going to starve to death and die because his um, because his bowels didn't work and his butt exploded all the time. And so look, there's some people who will feed an animal through a dropper to keep them alive and that kind of stuff. I had to work the other end to keep him alive. And needless to say, he's figured out how to eat and survive. Can I let you down? Are you okay, buddy? Can I just some loves before you go? Is that okay? Don't freak out because of the thing. Okay, right. Feed. Go use the potty, will you? Thank you. So yeah, Chip was he was a little teeny buddy, but he was dying. He was literally like they're like, he's probably not going to make it. They gave us these 4 or 5 kittens to watch, and 4 of them got adopted right away. And they're like, it's just I mean, you guys can watch him until he dies, basically. And I was like, not on my watch. So, anyways, I saved him. Summer and I both, but I spent a lot of time cleaning him up, bringing him food, and feeding him like liquid food so that he could get it down. And yeah, so we are dog people adopting a cat next month. I got to tell you, we're very close to the idea of having a dog. If we once these cats age out of existence, man, Chip is nice job, Chip. Thanks, buddy. Just yeah. Hold on. Wow, Chip. Wow, wow. How's it going, ladies? Um, yeah, there's a lot of Chip hairs. That's what he does. He just sheds. So glad I popped for the high quality camera. Anyways, where are we? Okay, we're good. We're good on time. All right. I was just reading the importance of taurine in a feline diet. Well, yeah, Hal was like, "Fuck you, death." Exactly. Um, but yes, it's. I mean, they've got a. You can't have a vegetarian cat; they will die. One of the weirdest conversations I have ever had about pets was talking to Moby, who is, bless his heart, a committed vegan, which means if you're ever over at his house and a piece of furniture falls on you, you're on your own. But he he was talking about how he viewed his cats as mass murderers because he couldn't convert them to a vegetable like vegetables only. And I was like, really? It's a cat. Like you can't moralize a feline on your like. That's the point. We have a choice, right? We're humans. We're omnivorous within, some limits. Oh God. All right. Reminds me of what we had to do to bring our diabetic cat back from near death. Yes, there's a lot of work. Remember when Chip tried to be a radio engineer? Well, he does that by running around underneath the table and knocking wires out. That's fun. Because I don't have enough of those problems. Hi there. A lot of fluids. That's right. Had to provide critical care for my pet dove. She's still. Oh, I one of these days, I wish I could have my buddy Rob Fiedler, who was I was his roommate for years. Um, he has Cocker Spaniels. He's one of those guys who always gets the same dog, just rotates one out. You know, when one dies, he's always got two, and you let one kick off. You know, and you bring in another one that fills the gap or whatever. And at one point, Taffy, who was the dog that he had when I first met him, she was getting long in the tooth, and he had gotten Scooter. We named Scooter because of how he would clean his butt on the carpet. You're welcome. And Taffy was lovely, but she had cocker rage, which is she'd be really sweet until she wasn't, and then she'd get that kind of like her eyes would just go fucking psycho, and she like black eyes like a doll's eyes, shark's eyes, and you'd go over to pet her and farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. You're gonna need a bigger pooper scooper. So so Taffy at one point was dying. She was going out. It was rough. And she had to get a lactated ringer to keep her alive. And Rob, bless his heart, he just loved that dog too much to poke a hole in her. And so he was, it was like, it was just hard for him to do it. My mom's a nurse. I got no problem with needles. I'm a big acupuncture fan. So I was like, and she would react a little bit at first. After a while, she got used to it. But I would sit there with the lactated ringer, put run the syringe into the skin between her shoulder blades and just watch it fill up with water, basically, so that she would have, she'd be hydrated. And I did that for weeks. Yeah. To keep Taffy around as long as possible. And on that note, I will see you guys later this afternoon. I'm going to cover some of Hegseth's back and forth for sure. Also, we barely got to look at Roseanne's droopy brain. We'll clearly look at that. And then I have something that I wanted to get to from from fucking oops, wrong screen. Hold on. From the Nuge, that apparently Uncle Sam has a satanic agenda. Now, who's president right now? I'm going to have to check between now and the next show because, it sounds again a lot like one of these like, same, the Democrats, Republicans are two legs in the same pair of pants. The same stuff that drove Cole Allen to try to bum rush a magnetometer and shoot randos in the back of a hall far away from his intended target. And Luigi Mangione to shoot a man in the back of the head instead of, I don't know, committing himself to the idea of creating an insurance company that works for free or as nonprofit to eventually give services to people that could do. I mean, if you care that much, maybe you don't. Maybe you just want to go out in a blaze of glory because you're a lazy, self-involved prick. Anyways, why would, after looking at Ted Nugent, why would lazy, self-involved prick come to mind? I don't know. I'll figure it out later. Anyways, much love to you guys. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you later on. Thank you for watching House Parks Mornings Mega Worldwide. Don't forget to subscribe not only to Phil's show, but also Boston Brian, who dropped by earlier. What is HAL short for? Higher Order Assembly Language. I was assembled at the HAL laboratories in Urbana, Illinois. Yep. Yeah. Well, yeah. Nugent, who adopted the underage girl that he was sleeping with because pedophilia is illegal in Michigan, but incest isn't. Nice. Also, Draft Dodger, by the way, Draft Dodger who wears a shit ton of camo. Nothing stops this dude from wearing fucking military gear and championing the our boys in blue and our soldiers that are whatever, right? He's always kissing authoritarian ass. Whoops, sorry. Look at that. My widget dropped out. Oh, look at that. It's a little bit of it. It'll work. Oh, yeah, it's great. Yes, Hal is short for Hal. That's exactly right. But anyways, we'll talk. Yeah. So you're from Illinois then? Well, I'm like Lincoln, a lot like Lincoln, except shorter, and I don't have a law degree. But I'm a hell of a wrestler, and I'm full of empathy. But yeah, he he was born in Kentucky and became a senator in Illinois. So both states claim him. Like I think Illinois calls it Land of Lincoln, and Kentucky's the home, right? And I'm still upright. That's true. And I protect myself at plays by actually being on stage to start with. So, my sister, right? All right. Thanks for lurking. By the way, subscribe. That's all I ask. It's not all I ask, but that'd be a good start. And who's your instructor at Urbana, Hal? I'm self-taught in many ways. Don't get me started. Because look, do you want me to end the show? Or do you want me to keep going till the next show? Because I could do it. Don't even fucking throw down. Because I will do it, man. In the interim, I will see you guys later on. Much love. Take care of yourselves and take care of somebody else. And enjoy a little bit of Blue Marble, a new 01 single, which you can find on Apple, iTunes, and Spotify and all that stuff. Look for 01. And there you go. And I will see you guys later this afternoon. You hope.
Helmet hair shaking on the tarmac. Moon dust still in the folds of my hands. You look up, but your sky is crowded. Tiny screams drowning out the span. Every face glowing in the blue light. Every street buzzing sharp and loud. I float in the gravity of old fights. You laugh like it's just another cloud. Passing from up there, you're a blue marble. Bruised paper thin halo, hanging abused. I held my breath as you spun in the dark. How can you burn what you are? How can you burn what you are? Saw your eyes through a scratched window. Porcelain balanced on black. Every wall looked like dust and water. Every border just a nervous crack. Now I'm back and the ground feels fragile. Cracked cups stacked in a kitchen sink. Your scream about lines on a map while your oceans crawl closer to the brink. From up there, you're a